The sun dips below the horizon as a black SUV pulls up in front of an old yet spacious house on the outskirts of town. George turns off the engine and a tense silence follows. "Here we are, home," he says with a smile, glancing at Anna. Her fingers tighten around the seatbelt. She doesn't know why, but this place feels foreign. Not even frightening, at least not yet, just wrong. Nick, their 6-year-old son, jumps out of the car excitedly and runs toward the door. "It's huge," he shouts. "Can I have a room with a balcony?" George chuckles. "We'll see what's here." They step inside. The scent of dampness and aged wood fills their lungs. The house has been empty for a long time. An attic, creaky stairs, long hallways where the darkness seems thicker than it should be, even during the day. "It just needs some fixing up," Anna reassures herself. "It's even kind of cozy." But as they enter the living room, Nick suddenly stops and stares at the ceiling. "What is it, sweetheart?" Anna asks. The boy slowly lifts his gaze to his parents. "Someone lives here," he whispers. George lets out a nervous laugh. "Don't be silly, kiddo. This is our house now." But as he says the words, a faint creak echoes from upstairs, as if someone had stepped on the old wooden floor. Anna quickly turns toward the staircase, but there's no one there. Just darkness, denser than it should be. George gently places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's just an old house. You'll get used to it." But she's not sure she wants to. Somewhere deep in the house, something softly taps, as if someone has been waiting for them. Impatiently, night wraps the house in silence. Anna wakes up, feeling a coldness creeping under the blanket. She props herself up on her elbows, glancing into the darkness. George is asleep, his face tense as if trapped in a nightmare. Then she hears it for the first time, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. The sounds are coming from the walls. She holds her breath and listens. Shh! The words are indistinct, but she can tell. There are many of them, as if a crowd of people stands just beyond the walls, speaking in hushed voices. Anna throws off the blanket and slowly approaches the wall, pressing her palm against it. A slight vibration hums beneath her touch. Suddenly the voices stop. A dreadful silence fills the room. What the... At that moment, George inhales sharply and bolts upright in bed, his eyes wide open. Sweat glistens on his skin. "What's wrong?" Anna grabs his hand, alarmed. George breathes heavily, staring straight ahead. His voice is hoarse, as if he had been screaming for a long time. "I saw something." Anna swallows the lump in her throat. "What did you see?" He runs his hands over his face, trying to collect himself. "It was me. But not me. I was standing right here, in this room. And I was listening to something inside the walls. And then..." He clutches his head. "God, someone spoke to me." Anna feels goosebumps rise on her skin. What did they say? George lifts his gaze to her. His eyes are empty, dark. That I have to do the same. Silence hangs heavy in the air. Then, from the hallway, a sound, something softly dragging across the floor. Anna jumps at the sudden noise. Her eyes dart to the slightly open bedroom door. The darkness beyond it seems thick, alive. Without a word, George gets out of bed and walks toward the door. Anna's voice trembles. "Where are you going?" He doesn't answer. His movements are mechanical, as if he's sleepwalking. Anna rushes to him, grabbing his arm. George! He jolts, as if snapping out of a trance, and looks at her. Confusion and fear flicker in his eyes. I don't know. From downstairs, another sound. A heavy step on the wooden floor. Anna and George freeze. They were alone in this house. Or were they? George and Anna stand at the bedroom door, holding their breath. Footsteps echo from downstairs again. Slow, heavy, as if someone is wandering through the dark house. Anna grips her husband's hand. Could it be Nick? George silently shakes his head. Something about these steps chills him to the core. They don't sound the way they should. He takes a cautious step forward, carefully opening the door. The hallway is swallowed in pitch-black darkness. The walls seem closer than they did during the day. "Stay here," George whispers and steps out. Anna wants to stop him, but it's too late. He moves slowly down the corridor, his bare feet soundless against the floor. The staircase ahead is shrouded in a darkness that seems alive. The footsteps below go silent. George freezes. Something shifts. The air thickens, pressing against his chest. He steps onto the first stair. By the second, breathing becomes harder. By the third, a faint ringing fills his head. By the time he reaches the middle of the staircase, the entire house seems to hold its breath along with him. And then, in the dim moonlight filtering through the window, he sees it. A figure, tall, motionless, standing in the middle of the living room. A cold weight settles in George's stomach. The figure is turned away, but he knows it's waiting. Silence presses in, suffocating. A scream builds in his throat. Then, slowly, eerily, the figure begins to turn its head, not its body, just the head. George catches a glimpse of a pale face before the figure lunges forward. A rush of icy air slices past him, sharp as a blade against his skin. George stumbles back, nearly falling, and then nothing. No one is there, just darkness, and his own ragged breathing. Anna rushes onto the stairs, terror in her eyes. What happened? George can't speak. His hands tremble. He turns back toward the living room, staring into the void, and then he sees it. The basement door is open, but he knows he closed it. Below, there is nothing but endless blackness, and from within that blackness, something is looking back at him. George feels his heart pounding in his chest. The basement door is open just a few inches, and beyond it, pure darkness, thick and alive. Anna stands behind him, clutching the collar of her nightgown. "George, what do you see?" He doesn't answer. He can't answer, because in that darkness, something is there. Eyes, two faint, dim specks of light staring straight at him. He blinks, and they're gone. "It was just the wind," he mutters, though he knows it's a lie. I'll just check." Anna grabs his arm. "Don't." Her fingers are cold, as if she feels it too. But something inside him pulls forward. An invisible force urges him closer, compels him to look deeper into the blackness, to take another step. He shakes his head, snapping himself out of it, and abruptly slams the basement door shut. The sound is too loud. Bang! Its echo rippling through the hallways. For a moment, the entire house seems to hold its breath. Then, from upstairs, a sound, a long, slow, drawn-out creak, as if someone is walking across the attic. Anna inhales sharply. It can't be. George feels his blood turn to ice. They had just woken up to footsteps downstairs, but now Something is above them. Their heads turn in unison, eyes locked on the ceiling. Another creak. Something is moving up there. George takes a step back, gripping Anna's hand. "We need to get to Nick." They hurry down the hall, pushing open their son's bedroom door. Nick is fast asleep, bundled under the covers, his face barely visible. But something is wrong. George looks at the window. It's open. Cold air shifts the curtains, and on the floor, wet footprints, small, bare feet. The trail leads from the window into Nick's bed, and there, standing in the darkest corner of the room, is a figure, short, gaunt. Its twisted features barely discernible in the shadows, and it is staring right at them. Anna grips George's arm, her nails digging into his skin. She sees it too, the silhouette in the corner. It stands motionless, its head slightly tilted as if watching them with curiosity. George's heart pounds in his chest. Nick sleeps soundly, unaware of the thing looming over him. "George," Anna whispers, her voice barely holding together. The figure twitches as if it heard her, and then it takes a step forward. George lunges, reaching for his son, but in that same instant, the figure vanishes as if it had never been there. Only the open window remains, the night wind whipping at the curtains. George scoops Nick into his arms. The boy stirs, blinking groggily. "Dad?" Anna presses a hand to his forehead. His skin is ice cold, as if he had just stepped in from a blizzard. "It's okay, sweetheart. You'll sleep with us tonight." They take him to their room, closing the bedroom door behind them. George shuts the window, but the uneasy feeling lingers. Something is still here, something watching from the shadows. They settle into bed, Anna wrapping her arms protectively around Nick. George sits at the edge, staring into the darkness beyond the window. The house is silent, utterly, unnaturally silent. And he doesn't know what terrifies him more, the footsteps, the whispers, or this absence of sound. A dull ringing fills his head. Exhaustion weighs on him, but he doesn't dare close his eyes. And then he hears it. A breath, soft, slow, right behind him, heavy, deliberate, as if someone is standing just inches away. Anna suddenly shudders, sitting up sharply. What was that? George doesn't answer. He doesn't want to turn around. But the breath moves closer, and then a hot whisper against his ear. It's already too late. George whirls around and sees a face, grey, gaunt, hollow sockets where eyes should be. It stands there, inches away in the thick darkness, and it's smiling. George feels his body freeze. His heart pounds in his throat, his lungs squeeze tight with terror. The face in the darkness stares at him, that smile, wide, unnatural, stretched so far that the lips nearly touch the ears, eyes, two black voids. George doesn't scream. He can't. Anna's shriek shatters the silence, snapping him out of his paralysis. She clutches Nick, pulling him close. George blinks, and the face is gone. Only darkness remains. He lunges for the lamp, flicking it on. Light floods the room, but the fear doesn't fade. Anna gasps for air, her arms trembling as she holds their son against her chest. I saw it," she whispers. It was..." She doesn't finish. George slowly scans the room. No one. But something is wrong. His gaze stops at the mirror. His reflection isn't moving. Instinctively, he shifts to the side, but his reflection doesn't follow. A cold fist clenches around his heart, and then the reflection smiles, wide, like the thing he had just seen in the dark. It tilts its head. George shudders. He didn't move, but his reflection did. Its face is no longer his. Its eyes darken, its lips stretching into a grotesque grin. Then it opens its mouth, not to speak, to scream a soundless, gaping wail. George feels an invisible force clamp around his chest, and in that instant, the bedside lamp flickers out. Darkness swallows the room once more, and then, crack! A sharp, splintering sound rips through the silence. Anna screams. George spins toward the mirror. A web of cracks spreads across the glass. His shattered reflection stares back, distorted, broken. He knows. This was a warning. The house isn't letting them go, and the darkness is only beginning to unveil its secrets. The room is thick with silence. The cracks in the mirror spread like black veins, radiating from the center as if something inside had tried to break free. Anna trembles, clutching Nick tightly. Her eyes are filled with terror. "We have to leave," she whispers, barely audible. George doesn't respond. He feels it now. Something has changed. The house is alive, watching them, and it's hungry. "I'll check the front door," George finally says. Anna nods but refuses to let go of his hand. "Did you hear me? We have to go." Slowly, George turns his head to her, his eyes empty, as if something vital had been stripped away. "Leave," he murmurs, as though tasting the word. And then he smiles. A smile that isn't his. Anna recoils. "George, what's wrong with you?" He tilts his head slightly, as if listening to something else. It's already too late. A strangled gasp escapes Anna's lips. Nick stirs in her arms, still half asleep, unaware of the horror unfolding around him, and then the house wakes up. Doors slam shut on their own. A thick, dark liquid begins to seep from the ceiling, trickling down the walls. The floor shudders. Something beneath them is moving. From downstairs, the basement door crashes open with a deafening bang. And then George turns sharply to Anna. His face is pale, his eyes dark, and something else is inside them. "They won't let us go," he whispers, and all around them, the voices begin to laugh. Laughter echoes from everywhere. It seeps through the walls, drips from the ceiling, vibrates beneath their feet. It is a chorus, deep and high-pitched, childish and ancient, sinister and insane. Anna clutches Nick to her chest, her heart hammering. George stands motionless. His eyes are filled with darkness, his lips curled into a faint smile. His head tilts as if listening to voices no one else can hear. "They want us here," he whispers. "They want me." Anna stumbles backward, colliding with the wardrobe. The shadows thicken, and then she sees them. Figures, translucent, broken, faded like aged photographs. They emerge from the corners of the room, pressing against the walls, lurking in the darkness. So many of them, children, women, men, their faces twisted in agony, in suffering, but most of all, in hunger. They want another soul. They want George. One of them, a man with a slashed face and hollow black eyes, slowly raises a hand. He points at George, and then the voices speak as one. "He is ours." George shudders. His face changes, as if something inside him is fighting back. Anna sobs, grabbing his hands. "George, please, this isn't you." He jerks away, eyes wild. "You have to go." The walls tremble. The room shrinks. Anna knows they have to run, or this house will never let them go. But George doesn't move. Something holds him here. Anna screams through her tears, "Come with us!" Nick clutches his father's hand, his tiny voice cracking. "Dad, please!" George stands frozen. His body shakes. His eyes clear just for a moment. And for that brief instant, he looks like himself again. He inhales sharply. "Run!" Anna grabs Nick, bolts for the door. At the last second, George, drenched in sweat, moves. The house screams. The walls splinter. The shadows lunge at them, desperate to pull them back, to consume them. The door slams shut. Anna shrieks, but George grips the handle and rips it open. They burst outside. Behind them, the house groans as if breathing, merging with the stormy sky. And then silence. The house stands still, just as it always had. Only a single crack in the window remains, the only proof of what happened. George gasps for air, wrapping his arms around Anna and Nick. His hands still tremble. Anna sobs, looking at him. "You came back." George doesn't speak. His gaze remains dark, and for just a moment, only a moment, in the reflection of the porch mirror, George smiles, but not like himself.